Hello and welcome to the Worthy to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Kristiana Corona, and I'm so glad to have you here today. This is a special episode because I am joined by my former UT Dallas executive coaching teacher, Pam Aks. So glad to have you here, who, besides being a teacher, is also a talented mindset coach. And I know there's a lot of you out there that are, really facing unprecedented challenges this year. It's been a tough year, and you're dealing with a lot. Stress, organizational chaos, all of the things that are happening in the economy around us. And it's hard to not pass that negativity down to your team, right? So what I wanted to do is just kick off a series of stress reduction podcasts and invite a bunch of different guests in who are experts in different areas so that we can start to gain some new perspectives and some new tools on how to handle all of this heaviness and go from being in this sort of survival mode to really figuring out how to thrive and build resilience. So today I have Pam Aks joining me. She is an expert in neuroscience. She is an expert in coaching, and she really focuses on helping leaders develop an unstoppable mindset. So I think you're going to love this. I want to give a brief intro, but first of all, welcome, Pam. Thanks for being here.
Oh my goodness, I am so excited. Are you kidding? It's like I put on LinkedIn. I'm like that kid on waiting for Christmas morning. I've been waiting for this for over a week. So
I'm sorry I made you wait so long. I know the anticipation must be killing you.
It was, but it's all good. We're here now.
Well, it's delightful. And I'm so happy that you made time in your busy schedule for me. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So let me just tell the audience a little bit about you in case they don't know. So Pam is a PCC certified mindset coach, and she has a master's degree in psychology and is the founder of What's Within You, which is her organization. That's an international practice that specializes in neuroscience-based coaching for leaders and entrepreneurs and coaches. And since 2005, Pam's been dedicated to helping her clients develop unstoppable mindsets, empowering countless individuals to take bold action and achieve their goals. And who doesn't want that? She's known for her evidence-based approach, which really combines brain science with practical coaching techniques to create lasting change. She's also been the author of 2 books, Developing a Confident Mindset and How to Manage Stress and Worry Before It Manages You. So Pam shares her insights on mindset, resilience, and confidence through her podcast called Confidence Bites, which is BYTES, and also her blog, which provides valuable resources to a global audience. And I will just say Pam is very generous and she has lots of free resources. So after this episode, you should definitely check that out. In addition to coaching, she also serves as the director of the Executive and Professional Coaching Certification Program at the University of Texas, Dallas, which is where we met. And in that role, she's committed to ensuring the program exceeds student expectations by providing a dynamic learning experience. And with the support of an exceptional team of facilitators, mentors, and assessors, the program is designed to prepare students to coach at the PCC level, which is the professional level, and deliver outstanding coaching services to their clients. All right, so that was a lot, but let's jump in. So I think what would be cool is to start off with just a little bit, like kind of on the personal side. On your website, you talk about, hey, I'm Pam. I'm a recovered follower, people pleaser, and peacekeeper, which is a super interesting way to kick off your bio for yourself. You talk about how you used to pretend to be someone else so that you could kind of fit in. You were afraid to speak up. You were afraid to make waves. You kind of let other people's opinions really dictate what you could and couldn't do. And my experience of you has been literally the exact opposite. And so I think it's so fascinating to understand just, what was your personal transformation like? Like, how did you go from being that people pleaser who was sort of, at the whim of the world around you to this much more directed, confident, action-oriented, and unstoppable person that you are today?
Oh, by magic wand. No.
That's what I was hoping you would say. So let me know where to buy that wand.
Wouldn't that be awesome? I have to say, I mean, that transformation obviously didn't happen overnight. It was really a series of small intentional shifts over time. And, as you mentioned, I was stuck in that pattern of people pleasing and hiding my true self because I believed that I wasn't good enough. That was the prevalent message that ran rampant in my head. And, that I had to be what other people wanted me to be in order to fit in. And I remember distinctly how exhausting it was to constantly
Mm.
turn myself into a pretzel, constantly second guessing my decisions and worrying more about other people's opinions than my own. And I think the real turning point for me came when I almost became an alcoholic, actually.
Mm.
That's when I decided that it was time to stop the madness and start working on my inner voice and getting to know me at my core. And I realized, living someone else's version of my life, it was painful. It was draining. And hence my almost becoming an alcoholic to numb all of that. Through coaching and lots of introspection, journaling in particular, I began practicing self awareness, self compassion, and started reprogramming my mindset, understanding and prioritizing, my values. Who was
Mhm.
I? What made me tick? And what did I really want? And so this journey has been about stepping really, truly into my authenticity. And as a result, over time, my confidence has grown. And so today, my decisions and how I show up are really rooted in who I am, and that has been incredibly freeing.
Hmm. It's so interesting just hearing you tell that story. I can hear that in your voice,
Yeah.
the confidence and the shift. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who maybe look at their circumstances and maybe how they were raised, where they came from, lack of support in being the
Yeah.
person that they really want to be, or taking chances on something that's not what everyone else saw for you. And, it's really inspiring to know that you can reprogram your brain. Like you have control to decide who you want to be and where you're going to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I grew up with the message, nice little girls were seen and not heard. So as a result, I kept my mouth shut. Was very shy and very introverted. People laugh at that now because I'm such a loudmouth now, but
and and what did that cause for you? Like as you took on that persona of being seen and not heard, what did that limit for you?
everything. Everything, literally everything. I think it was really a painful existence because I was constantly following the flow and the crowd instead of being confident enough to speak my truth and to speak up when I was being hurt or to speak up when something wasn't working for me, to advocate for myself. So it was painful.
Yeah. Well, I like how you also talk about your authentic voice kind of being the loudest one in your head. And now, it kind of drowns out all the negative chatter. So it's acknowledging that, yeah, that negative chatter still could be there. Those voices still
Mhm.
could be there, but you found ways to diminish their power and to cope with that so that your voice could really shine through. How did you do that exactly?
Well, first of all, I recognize that those negative voices and self-doubt, imposter syndrome, the stories of not good enough, they never fully disappear. They serve a purpose, actually. They're part of an outdated survival mechanism that we inherited from our prehistoric ancestors to actually keep us safe. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's in reality why they're there. And what shifted for me was understanding the brain and what was at the root of those voices. So enter my passion and obsession with neuroscience. Can't get enough of it. Having an understanding of my inner voice through the lens of neuroscience, well, that really helped me to demystify those narratives and gave me the tools to respond to them differently. So I use techniques like mindfulness. I mentioned journaling earlier. That has been my go-to for well over a decade, and has been so pivotal in helping me to understand the voices and unpack the things that they're saying, as well as the brain-based tools that I use to help raise my awareness and retrain my brain anytime negative stories appear. One of
Mhm.
those tools that I love to use is called self talk. Or as Ethan Kross, he's the author of a book called Chatter, which I highly recommend because it's awesome.
Mhm.
He calls it third person talk, and it goes something like this. Hey, Pam, you do realize that that's a story, right? And Pam, you realize that that's data. And Pam, you realize that you get to choose what to do with that data and you get to choose how it impacts you. Now, what this does is this helps create some distance between myself and the negative narrative so that I can start getting curious about it and start to figure out what's it trying to tell me instead of going down a rabbit hole with it and getting really anchored into the story.
I love that. Like, just being able to talk to yourself in that way. How does that feel? Like, do you feel kind of goofy doing that? Does it feel natural to you now that you've done it for so long?
That's a great question. At first, I felt really goofy, and then I realized, well, there's nobody standing here when I'm doing it, so it's just me and the walls. And after a while, because of the benefit I gained from it, I stopped feeling so goofy about it, and started feeling some. It's like, okay, this really actually this does work, and it is
Yeah.
helpful, and I can start seeing the story for what it is, just data that I get to
Yeah.
decide what to do with.
I think that is so powerful. And I can think of a lot of times in life where that would have been a very useful tool,
Oh,
to just be able to externalize this is a story. All it is a story. So what do I want to
yeah.
do with that story?
Right.
Versus saying this is a truth, this is my identity, this must be who I always am. And you mentioned that you had a recent event where this self talk was really helpful for you. So even though you've had years or decades of conquering this, we all have moments where this
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of pops up, right? So do you want to tell the listeners just the story of you being introduced to this leadership position for the coaching program and what came up for you, and then like what self talk helped you to get to that?
Yes, sure. So, confidence ebbs and flows, and I get that. It's based on what we're experiencing. So, I was asked a little over a year ago to apply for the director position in the Executive and Professional Coaching Certificate program at UT Dallas. I had been on faculty, and the director at the time was retiring because she wanted to spend more time with her family. And she said to me, she says, "Would you be interested in applying?" And at first, I was honored. I was excited. I was like, wow, oh, this is great. Yes, of course, of course. And then reality set in, and my inner critic came out. And all of a sudden, I started to feel this self doubt creep in through my body. And I took a big gulp of air, and my inner critic was in my ear saying, "You don't have what it takes. What makes you think you can be the director of this program?" And what that did was it took me back to that place of feeling unworthy and not good enough. But instead of staying in that space forever and ever, amen, I took a moment to do two things. The first one was to remind myself that my inner critic only comes out when something's really important to me. If it's not
Mhm.
important to me, she sits in the corner and crochets blankets and doilies and toilet paper roll covers. She doesn't care. So it's only when things are important that she comes out to give her 2 cents. That was the first thing I reminded myself of. The second thing was I reminded myself of the fact that I needed to reflect. I needed to sit and think about all the resources I have that are going to help me in this role. And the reason I did that, there's a psychologist by the name of Dr. Rick Hansen, and I follow his work. And he said something that just completely turned my world upside down. He said, "We have a tendency to overestimate our challenges," which was what I was doing in that moment, "and
Hmm.
underestimate our resources." And so I sat and reflected on all the things that I bring to the table that will help me be a great leader, all the accomplishments, the years of coaching, the growth I'd seen in my clients and in the students that I taught. And I also reminded myself and reconnected with just how much I love being of support to our student population. And so, from all of that, I was reminded that worthiness isn't about being perfect in that role. It was about showing up as me with my strengths and my experiences as my resource. And so, that's that's what happened. And as a result, my confidence returned. I'm not going to say it always stays. There are times as I'm going through this role that I still have moments of self doubt, but those moments are short lived.
Yeah. The arc of that story is so interesting though, because I feel like it's a repeatable process that you can use again and again and again. It's not that you will never feel like you're unworthy or that you'll never not have those critics there, but that in those moments where you do go into that sort of trough of despair,
Yeah.
here are the tools that you need to use. And I love that. And like, there's so much evidence. There's so much evidence that points towards, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? You would be
Mhm.
good for that role. You're ready for that role. You're deserving of that role. And so I love that you said yes to it. So you're a year in now. How
I
do you
am.
feel now? How do you feel now?
Oh, I'm excited. Like I said, I still get nervous from time to time. And there's still moments where I'm like, am I playing grown up and like wearing my mom's high heeled shoes that are 42 sizes bigger than my feet? Um, Sometimes it just feels that way because it's so surreal, but most of the time it's amazing. And I love what I do, and I love the connections that I have with the students and the faculty and our mentors and our assessors. We have an amazing team, and the students are incredible. So I'm
Yeah.
excited more
And
than
I
I
can
am
attest
scared.
to that 150%. Going through the program, like the energy that you guys bring, the care that you bring, the craft, and just
Mm,
the level of professionalism of that program is just incredible. So,
thank you.
so glad that you're the leader now.
Me too.
Um,
Thank you.
And one other thing I wanted to call out, just because I know that, for a lot of people, it's just, okay, how do I remember in that moment? How do I
Mm.
keep telling myself, okay, this is the tool I need to use? Oh, yeah, this is that moment. You actually believe it so strongly that you have this tattooed on your body, do you not?
I do have it tattooed on my body.
Can you
Yes,
tell
little.
can you tell us what your tattoo says?
Sure, little extreme, I know, but it was compelling. I have a tattoo on my wrist that says, "Be a voice, not an echo." It's an Einstein quote. It happens to be one of my favorite Einstein quotes, and it serves as my powerful reminder to always advocate for myself and to lead the way and encourage others to do the same. And so, as we talked about earlier, how I used to let other people's opinions and thoughts dictate my actions. This quote helps me stay grounded in my own voice, and so that I'm living authentically and showing up authentically, and so that I can inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, I love it. Be a
Mm.
voice, not an echo.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, you spent many years. What is it? 20 some years coaching leaders now?
Almost 20 years. It'll be 20
Almost
years in
20.
February. I know, it's crazy. Where did time go?
That's wild. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have almost 2 decades of experience coaching leaders, entrepreneurs, other coaches, on how to handle these stress moments, these
Mm.
chaotic moments effectively.
Mhm.
And I know that one of the areas that you really lean into, like you were talking about, to help get through some of those things is really understanding the brain and the neuroscience. And you say that our mindset is ultimately going to determine whether we succeed or fail at
Yeah.
handling our stress.
Yeah.
So, can you explain why mindset itself is so important?
Absolutely. So think about it this way. We put a lot of emphasis on what we feed our bodies, but we don't put a lot of emphasis on what we feed our brains. And so, if you think about what we feed our brains don't know fact from fiction. It relies on us based on what we're telling it. So, mindset actually shapes how we perceive and respond to anything, including stress. It's what we think and how those thoughts make us feel, essentially. And because, as I said, our brain doesn't know fact from fiction. It's going to act as Google and provide us all sorts of evidence to whatever it is we're thinking in the form of feelings. So when we view stress as something overwhelming, our brain goes into reactive mode. It's natural and it engages our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. But when we can shift our mindset to see stress as an opportunity for growth and learning, or maybe the opportunity or the cue that we have a need that needs to be met, um, that's when we activate the part of our brain that's responsible for problem solving and resilience. That's our prefrontal cortex, to get really geeky on you. This shift is really essential because it changes our physiology. Our bodies literally respond differently based on how we're perceiving the stress. And this is where also neuroplasticity comes into play. So when we begin to rewire our brains to adopt more positive, empowering beliefs about stress, that makes us more resilient. So rather than seeing stress as a negative, which is obviously going to make it worse because our body's going to respond in kind, we can use it as an indicator that there's something that we need to shift, or that there's something that we need full stop in order to mitigate the stress. For example, maybe we need a break. Maybe we need to take a pause. Maybe we need to take a couple of deep breaths. So, I think that, and also there is a great TED Talk called How to Make Stress Your Friend. I had a brain hiccup there for a moment. And it's based on a book called The Upside of Stress by a psychologist by the name of Kelly McGonigal. It is worth a watch. Can we try a little exercise just to prove this point? Would
Oh,
that be okay?
yes. Let's do it. I love it.
Okay. So this is little exercises just to demonstrate how powerful our thoughts can be. And I call this the lemon exercise. I didn't come up with the exercise. I wish I had, because I love this exercise. But I want everybody to visualize that you have a lemon in front of you right now. And sitting in front of you, and you grab a knife and you cut that lemon in half. And then you cut one of the halves into quarters. So you have 2 quarters. Now I want you to pick up one of those quarters. And I want you to visualize or imagine that you've picked up that quarter and you've put it to your nose and you've taken a deep, deep, deep breath in of that lemon fresh smell. We all know what that smells like. And now I want you to imagine that you take that piece of lemon and you pop it in your mouth. I'm curious.
Yeah.
What's happening for you right now? Because I'm watching your face.
I feel the pucker. It's real.
It's real. Yeah. Or you
Yeah.
salivate. I was salivating even as I was just sharing it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't actually doing the exercise, but I was sharing it. Yeah. That is just a demonstration of how powerful our thoughts are.
I
We
love
didn't
it.
actually have a lemon in front of us. We
But
were
by the end of this
visualizing.
exercise, everyone is going to be craving lemonade and they're not going to know why. They're going to be like, what just happened? You just keep talking about this
Or those
amazing,
sugary lemon
juicy
slices. Yeah.
lemon. What did you do to me? Yeah. So, like, as you think about that exercise and how real it was, but then, like you said,
Yeah.
it's also the things that aren't actually happening to us there, but our brain doesn't know the difference. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
how do we handle that through the sort of the neuroplasticity or the way that our brain works?
Ooh, are you wanting me to geek out on neuroplasticity now?
Yeah,
Is that what
go
I'm hearing?
deep, go deep. I'm
Oh, go
I'm
deep. All
I'm
right.
up for
Oh,
it.
good. Okay. So, well, most people, I think by now, probably have heard that term thrown around a little bit, but neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself, basically to rewire itself by forming new neural connections, or what we call neural pathways. And this means that with consistent effort, we can change how we think, react, behave. We can even change deeply ingrained habits and belief systems. I think part of what makes this really important is being aware of when we're doing things or saying things to ourselves that is having us feel a certain way. And I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. But every time we practice a new thought, a new behavior, we strengthen a neural pathway that's associated with that new thought and that new behavior. And so over time, this becomes the brain's default mode. So, as an example, I used to be an emotional eater when I got stressed or upset. So, when stress would hit the scene, I would go, or when I would get upset, I would go into the kitchen and mindlessly eat, even though I wasn't hungry. That was my reaction to the cue, the stress, and the upset. And the reward for that behavior was to feel a sense of comfort briefly in the moment. And then after that, of course, guilt for mindlessly eating.
Yeah, and then the downward spiral. Yes.
And then the downward spiral. I wasn't aware truly that I was doing that until I created some awareness. That's really important. Um, and paid attention to why was I mindlessly eating. And what I noticed was it happened again. It happened often when I was stressed or upset. So
Mm.
now, okay, fast forward, stress is the cue or upset is the cue. I know that what I'm really after is to feel some comfort, some relief from the stress. So rather than using my old habit or the old neural pathway of emotionally eating, I'll take a few deep breaths instead to gain that
Mhm.
comfort. And I've done that consistently over time to the point where that's the new default mode. So every time I get stressed, instead of getting up and going to the kitchen and grabbing something to eat when I'm not hungry, that's my cue. My brain goes, "Oh, let's take some deep breaths."
Mhm.
And so it can be very powerful, and it's possible. We can change our brains. How cool is that?
Yeah. I feel like that was one of the most important insights I learned through the coaching program was just that you have the brain that you have, but you're not stuck with that brain forever.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, even if those neural pathways are really deeply rooted and well worn in a certain behavior, that all it takes is determining a different path or a different
Yep.
reaction to that trigger and then practicing it again and again or visualizing it again and again, right? Until that new pathway actually becomes formed. And then
Yep.
eventually you can shift your wagon into those wagon ruts instead of the other ones.
Absolutely.
And it can become natural, right? It doesn't have to always be such a difficult exercise.
No, absolutely. The more we
Yeah.
use a habit or a pattern, the more it becomes second nature. The brain likes habit. It likes patterns. So once we create a new pattern that's a healthier pattern, that's the brain's go to instead of the old pattern that's not serving us so well.
I love that. So you kind of started to hint at that exercise, but I know you do like a specific exercise
Yeah.
sometimes with classes just to raise awareness
Mhm.
about stressful situations and then what our habits are or what we can learn from them. Would you be willing to walk through that exercise?
I absolutely would, with the caveat that we're only going to stay in a rabbit hole for a very brief moment.
Okay.
So I want to ask everyone to think about a recent time when you felt stressed or anxious or annoyed, just a negative feeling in general. And then once you have that recall of that recent time, tune in and notice, are there any physical sensations going on in your body? And if there are, where are you feeling them right now? And what do they feel like? So, for example, I mentioned stress and upset. When I am stressed or upset, I feel it now in my chest and in my throat. And it feels heavy. And sometimes it feels like a vice grip around my throat. And so when I am aware of that, I know, oh, wait a minute, stress is
Hmm.
here. Let's take a couple of deep breaths. Because when we become aware of the triggers and the sensations in our body that are related to stress and fear, we can then create choices that will help us calm down our nervous system. So we increase resilience and proactivity, as well as being responsive instead of reactive. You know, making a choice like taking a deep breath before responding in a conversation that might be a little heated. And
Mhm.
here's a little geeky factoid, because you know how I love my geeky factoids. The brain loves, loves, loves options and choices. And so when it anticipates making a choice, it's going to release feel good chemicals that also help calm down the nervous system.
Hmm. So, as you imagine feeling a sensation in your body, and it's a really strong
Mhm.
sensation, or it's like heat, or it's tension, it's
Mhm.
maybe even like a racing heart or something like that. What are the choices that you want to give to your brain to say, how should I handle this?
I think it's a matter of figuring out what is it, first of all, that you're needing in response to that feeling. So going back to
Mm.
my example of my emotional eating, when I was stressed, what I was after was comfort. I don't want to change the cue and I don't want to change the reward. What I want to change is the behavior that falls in between the cue and the reward. So if I'm in need of comfort, what can I do to provide comfort? Well, I can take a deep breath. I can go get a hug. I can I don't know, go take a long shower. There's all sorts
Mm-hmm.
of different things. And I think if we know that we're constantly triggered by something in particular, we can create what I like to call a menu that we can choose from, choose activities that we've identified in advance when we're feeling certain ways, to then, decide, okay, I'd rather do this instead.
I love
So
that.
that's, yeah,
I love
that's
that.
helpful.
I love the idea of understanding or asking yourself, what is it that I need in this moment? Because I don't know that we're always doing self reflection when we're in that sort
Mm,
of reactive mode. We're not
right.
like pause. Okay, why am I actually
Hmm.
upset right now? Why am I stressed? Why am I mad? Why am I anxious? Am I looking for clarity? Am I looking for comfort? Am I looking for a way out? Am I looking, what is it? And what I
Yeah.
find is I hold my breath. And I
Yep.
don't even realize that I'm holding my
Yeah.
breath until I react in that moment and then go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize
Not
I had
uncommon.
such a lack of oxygen. So I love the
Yep.
prompt about breathing and just pausing to take a few breaths because perhaps like it can be as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not uncommon when we're in that space to not breathe. And breathing is fantastic. Particularly, there's a little breathing technique that I talk about with clients often when we're in that state where we aren't breathing and we're all stressed out, to take a longer exhale than you do an inhale, because what that's doing is it's alerting the brain that everything's safe and we're okay. So if you take an inhale to a count of 4, you're going to want to take an exhale to a count of 6. And that
Mm.
again indicates to the brain everything's fine, we're good, and it calms down the nervous system.
Taking a
But we
breath
have to
right
be
now.
aware. We have to be aware.
I love it. It feels good. It just feels
Yeah.
good too. And then you're reacting to that positive
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so I know mindfulness and building self-awareness are really common talking points that people probably hear everywhere nowadays. Just
Mhm.
breeze by them and they're like, okay, yeah, this is healthy. I should probably do it, but I'll do it later when I have time, not when I'm so busy, right? But I think what a lot of people maybe don't know about self awareness is that our brains are actually predicting our thoughts based on the
Mm.
sensations in our body that you were just talking about.
Mhm.
And I think that's totally mind blowing. So I would love if you could just briefly talk about like, what is that body informing mind type of connection?
Well, first of all, it goes back to that awareness piece. Our body is an amazing tool, but we have to be checking in and noticing what we're feeling. And you're talking to a recovered person who used to live from the neck up. Until my own coach encouraged me to check in with my body 3 times a day. So I had to set a reminder in my calendar
Oh,
to
wow.
do that. Yes, and now it's just natural. But our brains, like you said, our brains are predictability machines. That's the job. The job is to create stability and predictability so it doesn't expend so we don't expend a lot of energy. And so it's predicting what's going to happen based on the signals we're receiving through our body. And this is the form of protection that stems from our prehistoric ancestors who had to be on high alert all the time. So sensations like tension, restlessness, stress, for example, they're processed by the brain, as cues. We talked about those cues earlier. So if you're feeling stress in your body, your brain might predict that something's wrong, even if it's not, or that you're in a state of danger, even if you're not, which can obviously trigger not just negative feelings, but negative thoughts. And I think what's fascinating is that by becoming more aware of these sensations, we get to interrupt the cycle and consciously choose a different interpretation of what we're experiencing. So instead of saying, "Oh, I'm totally stressed out. There's got to be something wrong. The sky is falling," which is natural, happens. We can do something different. We can say, "Oh gosh, I'm noticing I'm feeling some tension in my body right now. I wonder what that's about, or what it's trying to tell me." This what this does is it shifts the brain from prediction making to a curious state, which changes how we experience the moment we're in. And curiosity also triggers dopamine, which helps us to calm down. Now, there is a wonderful, wonderful author. Her name is Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a psychologist, and she wrote two books that I absolutely highly recommend. And I apologize for the snoring in the background. That's my puppy. Um, she wrote two books called 7.5 Lessons About the Brain and How Emotions Are Made. And I got a chance to hear her speak. And I remember some things that she said that just made such a difference. And so I will quote her verbatim. She said,
Mm.
"Your brain doesn't react to things in the world. It's actually predicting based on the state of your body and the state of the world right now. It's predicting what's going to happen next and then correcting, then predicting, and then correcting." And she went on to say, your brain is always receiving sensory data from your body and from the world around it. And it's using past experiences to make sense. Part of making sense means making predictions about what to do next and what you're likely to experience next. So if you think about it, our past experiences are going to dictate, bring up memories that are going to dictate how we feel and going to spur that prediction, which could lead to things like, stress, procrastination, excuses, mental blocks. And so that's another reason why getting in touch with what's going on in our bodies is super helpful. And that was super windy. Sorry.
Oh, I love it. And I've heard you say it before, but it like every time I hear it, it really sinks deep. And I think, part of it is just to your point of awareness. We may not be aware of previous experiences and how those
Yeah.
are influencing our reactions today. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, that can be really profound, right? Like you might be having a response to something because of something completely unrelated or something that happened in the past that you wouldn't even be aware of that is driving this procrastination, perhaps,
Yeah.
where you're like, why can I
Oh,
not get
yeah.
over this hurdle? What is holding me back? And perhaps it's some experience that you had in the past and your body's warning you, danger, that could happen again, even though
Yep.
it's completely different than what's happening today.
Absolutely. That's how our brain functions. Its job is to keep us safe.
So if we're getting more attuned to, what's
Mhm.
happening in our body and we can start to understand those sensations, and then really focus on rewiring our brains, we can start interpreting these things differently. I can't hear your dog, don't. So is this snoring really loud?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm glad you can't hear it.
I just I think it's fascinating that we actually have that much control over our brains and that our
Mhm.
body, is driving a lot of that. And I think about a lot of people today are, like I mentioned before, going through a lot of stressors right now. When I
Yeah.
think about
Yeah.
even this month in particular, we're
Yeah.
leading up to a presidential election. There's economic pressures, there's layoffs, there's natural disasters happening,
Yeah.
there's wars on different parts of the world, there's health struggles going on. I mean, you just can look around and you see all these pressures, all of
Yeah.
this chaos that's kind of coming around, and it can be quite overwhelming and heavy for people.
Yeah.
And as leaders, we're kind of expected to show up well, right? We're expected to show up confidently. We're expected to handle this heavy load that others are going through gracefully
Yeah.
and help them work through it, right? Which is a whole nother thing. So, I'm just curious as we think about that aspect of leadership, what are some of the practical strategies that you would implement with us as leaders so that we can rewire our brains to say, no matter whatever that chaos is and how many things are piled on top of it, that we can become more calm and resilient in the face of all of that?
Great question. I think first and foremost, it's important to give ourselves some grace, knowing that we're human and we're going to have feelings and we're going to be impacted by all the things. But here's the good news, also recognizing that there is some good news. We can stand in choice at every given moment, at every given time. And as I mentioned earlier, we can do that to handle the chaos in ways that are less harmful. So there are three practical strategies that I love to use and I support my clients in using. The first one I'm a huge proponent of, and that's breath work. And you mentioned it earlier when you noticed that sometimes you're not breathing. That's not uncommon. When we are stressed out or in a place of fear or anxiety, our breath becomes shallow and our nervous system is revved up. So breath work is really helpful. And, that could be, as I mentioned earlier, the longer exhale than the shorter inhale. I have a app that I use. It's called Breath Work, but it's one word, but the work is spelled without a zero or an O. Sorry, I can't even spell today, I guess. Um,
So
and
WRK.
WRK, so
Yeah,
breath work. Yeah. And
cool.
it's an amazing app. It has all sorts of different exercises, breathing exercises based on what you're feeling and experiencing, whether that's brain fog or anxiety. I use it every morning and I use it as needed to get in that state of calm, so that I can, manage and navigate the chaos and not get anchored into it. The other is the self-talking reframe, but doing it in a different way. So I gave that third person example from Ethan Kross's book, Chatter. But there's also what's called labeling, soft labeling. So if I'm noticing a negative thought, rather than following that negative thought and anchoring into it and getting caught up in it and getting caught up in the chaos of it, I can just go, thought, thought, thought. So I'm just labeling it thought. I'm not anchoring. I'm not going, oh yeah, the world is going to stop rotating on its axis. The sky is falling. We're all going to fall into a deep dark hole. No, it's just thought. That's it. I'm labeling it thought, and that's it. If that doesn't work, this is my favorite tool of all. And it comes from Deepak Chopra. I stole it from him. I'm sure he won't mind. Um,
No.
but he said something, I think it was during a podcast I was listening to, where he said, if you're having a negative thought, just ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. Now, at first I scoffed at that. I thought, yeah, right, it's not that easy. And then I tried it because that's what I do. And sure enough, it stopped the negative thought right in its track. And because my brain was looking for the next thought and there was no next thought. So it drew a blank and I calmed down. So
That's
that is,
awesome.
yeah, that's a
I love
really
that.
helpful tool. Really helpful tool. And the third
Hmm.
is self care. We hear it all the time. I know it's becoming cliche to a lot of folks, and people are probably going, I don't have time. Even if you just have 10 minutes a day to do something like get outside, take some deep breaths, meditate, take a 10-minute power nap, that can make a difference, because the reality is this: when we are running low on energy, we are more susceptible to the impact of the chaos and the stress and the negative thinking and the reactivity. So, getting up from your desk and taking a 10-minute walk outside can do wonders. They've actually done studies about the impact of nature on mindset. So, I've been known to go out and hug a tree during my 10 minutes. Makes a difference. So, those are my
Yeah,
three strategies. There you
I
go.
love it. I love it. Thank you. And I think
Yeah.
that just kind of summarizing what you were saying before around the curiosity for me is another really powerful thing that you talked about today. Is just the moment we turn to curiosity, it
Mhm.
triggers like a different part of our brain, right? So then the
Yeah.
part that's in that sort of reactive animalistic fear, better run or fight, it shifts to, huh, okay, well, let's observe this. When I'm observing something, I'm naturally in a neutral position. I'm naturally disconnected from all of that stress response. And so I've been practicing that recently, just in moments where I find myself getting fired up about something on the inside, like, oh,
Mhm.
the injustice or the how could they do that, and
Yeah.
going, that's interesting. I wonder why I'm feeling that way right now. What is it that they just
Mm.
said that made me feel that way? Or like, about politics or other things
Yeah.
like that, where you're like, whoa, that statement really triggered me. I wonder why. Wonder what about that thought was really, hitting me wrong, or is it conflicting with some value that I have? Or is it just that I'm absorbing this from somewhere else? And you start to like analyze it,
Yeah.
and then you find yourself just sitting back and kind of thinking instead of doing this, whatever that reaction was
Yeah.
going to be originally, which is probably a lot safer and better for everyone else. Um, so anyway, I love that strategy that you shared too, kind of the
Oh.
curiosity.
Well, kudos to you for, analyzing, sitting there going, I wonder what caused that. I wonder what it was about what they said that made me feel that way. Yeah. And getting in that curious space. Curiosity is such an amazing tool. If we can just get curious. And sometimes I'll encourage clients to uh, pretend that they are 10,000 feet above whatever is bothering them and ask
Mm.
them, if you're 10,000 feet above it, what are you seeing and noticing that maybe you weren't seeing and noticing when you were standing
Mm.
smack dab in the middle of it? And it's just engaging their curiosity to get them to look at it from a more neutral perspective as opposed to a charged perspective. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so good. Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this conversation. I always find your teaching so enlightening. It's so
Listen.
fun to follow and easy to absorb, the different strategies that you shared. So thank you for doing that. And I'm sure, my listeners are going to be interested to know where they can find out more about you. So, where should I tell them to go to find
Oh,
you and your content?
well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. This has been such an honor and a privilege, really, truly spending time
Mm.
with you and answering your great questions. So, if you're looking for me on the internet, I am, my website is what'swithinyou.com, and that's the letter U or YOU, either one. And we have a second party being heard of. She's telling you where you can find me. There, you're going to find all sorts of free resources, my blog, my newsletter. I have a 7-day confidence building challenge, all sorts of goodies there, as well as I'm on LinkedIn too. So,
Awesome. And like I mentioned, you have lots of free resources, but you also have more like hands-on support options for people as they are kind of working on building that resilience mindset. I know you have like a 30-minute online course. You have more of a
mhm,
3-hour coaching session called Vision Lab, which sounded
yeah,
really interesting. And then you also do group coaching and one-on-one coaching. Can
I
you tell
do.
us a little bit more about the hands-on options that you have?
Oh, sure, sure. So I do. I offer the one-on-one coaching in the form of individual sessions, or as you mentioned, the Vision Lab, which is a 3-hour intensive, and this is a powerful coaching session where we help you transform your ideas and goals into a winning strategy. And then there's my signature program, which is called the Unstoppable Mindset Group Coaching Program, and that is. Oh, pardon me, just a moment. Let me grab her. She is getting real
Yes.
mouthy, little monster. Um,
Oh, cute.
yay! So the group coaching program is a very small, intimate group of 4. I don't take more than 4 in the program. That allows us to dive really deep into some of the neuroscience behind our inner critic that stands in our way from taking our goals from paper to reality. And so we look at those things so we can push past that negative narrative and use those neuroscience based tools and insights that help us create that long lasting transformation. It's a powerful experience. I've done
Mm.
several since I launched a year ago, and I only offer it a couple times a year. And the next group is starting in January.
Ooh, that's not too far off.
No, it
So
is not.
if
Good
they
way to
want,
start the new year.
yeah, that sounds so cool. I don't know a lot of people that have done small, intimate, group sessions like that. That's a really cool idea. And so if they are interested in it, they just go to your website. The information's on your website.
It's all there. It is
Okay.
all there. And
Okay.
absolutely, if they have questions, I answer all my own emails. So they can always reach out.
Perfect. And just for everyone who's listening, like if you're listening in the car, you can't write anything down, don't worry. I'm going to post all the links and everything that Pam was just sharing. I'll put it in the show notes. And so you can find the details on that at worthytoleadpodcast.com/11. So thank you again, Pam, for coming on the Worthy to Lead
Oh,
podcast. I'm so happy that we could talk through this important topic because I know it's on a lot of people's minds. And I'm sure that my listeners had a great time kind of learning from your mini training today. So,
well, thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege. And again, everyone, I apologize for the dog in the background.
oh no, the dog's amazing. I think having the dog in the video now, if you haven't seen it, you're going to have to watch the video just so you can see how cute her dog is. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Pam.
You bet. Been a pleasure.
All right. Take care. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to subscribe so that you get all the new episodes as I release them. You can subscribe at worthytoleadpodcast.com/subscribe. And don't forget to share this with friends or leaders in your life who need to hear these messages. I wish you the best on your journey towards becoming the worthy leaders that I know you are. Bye for now.